Hello and welcome to this roundtable. This roundtable is the second in the Mobility Methodology series. This is a pedestrian space roundtable hosted for the Global Walkability Correspondence Network. The Mobility Methodology series was founded this month and is hosted by the Academia and Engagement Working Group in the network. And the purpose of the series is to spotlight the work of various academics in the network, master's students, PhD students, professors who work with various issues of mobility and incorporate that into their methodologies, but also to spotlight the work of various practitioners and professionals in the network who also incorporate aspects of mobility into their working methodologies. So today, I'm very excited. Today we are with Anas Moutaouakil. I hope I got that right. Who is Brussels-based architect and urban designer. His presentation is on his published thesis, Connecting Mobility Policies to Urban Fabric, the Exnovation of the Private Automobile in Brussels. This sounds really interesting, and I am so happy that Anas is in the network. I recently welcomed him, in fact, on the very day he graduated. It was very exciting. So thank you, Anas. And I also noticed that your other thesis is on Black Bottom Pattern of Growth Lessons from Detroit's Streetcar System. So I will be asking you to join for another roundtable featuring that work later on. So I will turn it over to you now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anika. It's very nice to be part of this program. And so I want to thank everybody for joining in. I would like to take you on a journey between in the crossroads between two field of studies, the urban planning studies and the sustainability transition studies, and exactly where we would be connecting the mobility policies to urban fabric. I would like to start the presentation by settling three main questions, which actually are the basis for my work. The first one is why was the subject chosen, and the second one, what it was dealing most about, and the last one is like to where does it lead, and what are the questions that we are actually opening up to. The first question is why, and the first is why mobility policies in urban fabric. And the question is, it comes back from a personal background. As Anika mentioned, I worked previously on Detroit, and where I did like a study of how the transportation system influenced the development of the city of Detroit, and how actually a shift in it participated, among other things, to the downfall of the city. And from that on as well, I worked on many other with other urban planning firms here in Brussels that dealt with the interaction between transportation, the mobility, and urban space, and how we can actually participate or implicate the users into shaping the city. The second part of it is why now. Let me just say that this thesis started in 2020 and actually coincided with two major events. The first one was more related globally to the COVID pandemic, and the second one was with the introduction of a new mobility policy package produced by the Brussels region, and it's called Good Move, and it's actually a compilation of many mobility policies that are aiming to reduce the presence of the automobile in the region. And the second question is what? So what was the scope of work? The scope of work is mostly related to the plan of Good Move. As I mentioned, it's the mobility policy, the mobility strategy of the region. And it says that it wants to encourage the user to choose the mode most adapted to each of their trips, freeing themselves as much as possible of the use of the individual car in an urban environment. So from here we have, to sum it up, we have a government, the government of the Brussels region. And side note, Belgium is a federal state and has like 3 regions. You have the Flemish region, you have the Walloon region, and you have the Brussels region. The specificity is that the Brussels region is actually enclaved inside of the Flemish region, and that later we will see how it actually influenced the outcome of the policies. So, as I said, there you have a government that introduces mobility policies into a specific geographic place. So, but we see that the political and the political boundaries of the city are actually very far from what is the reality. So we have very linked outskirts to the city. So the main one of the most the focus of my work was actually studying how the urban fabric, the spread of this urban fabric influences the outcome of the mobility policies. So the main question was, what is the influence of the urban form on the outcomes of urban mobility policies that aim to destabilize the automobility regime in the Brussels region and its outskirts? Going from that, I had like I'm coming from an urban planning and architectural background, and I was faced with a new field, which was like the sustainability transition studies. So I had to merge 2 fields of studies, the urban planning studies and the sustainability transition studies. And from each, I had to take what I had as knowledge and try to merge them both and actually use each one of the features to help me make good analysis. So we had the urban planning studies. In the urban planning studies, we focus mostly on the urban form, how the city actually develops, and the typologies of the built environment showcase. We have different forms, we have different theories, and they mostly look at the urban, the city from its physical appearance. We have also another way of seeing the city is through the influence of transport, and how we have, for example, a theory about how walking and how walking actually limited the development of the city. And then with every introduction of a new mode of transport, we had a development of the city. And the more we go, the more we see that the city changes dependent on that transport mode. And from that one, we had like 3 urban fabrics. So the walking urban fabrics, the transit urban fabric, and the auto urban fabric. And actually, these 3 typologies were used in my thesis to kind of create a grid of analysis. Here you can see the kind of the features to describe each of one of these urban fabrics, meaning the main way of transportation, the distance measurements, the urban form, the density, the public space usage, and the road typology. And we can see that, for example, the Vulcan city has a very dense and very mixed land use and very compact one. Whereas like the automobile city is more, we have a dominance of the automobile, and we have an car-oriented urbanism with a very low density and very fragmented usage. For example, here I give a typology or an example of in Brussels of the urban fabric of the Vulcan cities, the Vulcan city fabric. And as you can see, it's a very dense, very medieval urban typology. The second part is the transit city fabric, which is mostly coincided from the late 19th century to the early 20th century. And we see how the roads get a bit bigger, but we still have a very dense, relatively dense urban fabric. On the other side, we have the automobile or the car city fabric, where it is characterized by a very monofunctional land use and a very sparse and low density urban fabric. On the other side, there was the sustainability transition studies. That was actually the novelty for me. And here we study mostly how innovation develop and how they are brought from what we call a niche innovation, and they are introduced through many processes of learning and of pushing to destabilize the regime, the actual regime, to become a new regime. And how does it relate to my subject is that we have so far what we call an exnovation, which is actually the opposite of innovation. It's a very different word that I discovered. It comes from the economic world, where it does mean I took this definition, which sounds to me the most easy one to understand. So the exnovation is defined as a process in which a given technology is currently no longer used because its physical infrastructure has been deliberately removed. Coming back to this graphic, we can see that the process that we are now talking about, what the good move brings is limiting the place or the space taken by the car, and it falls into the exnovation process. The other part of this diagram is, as you see, we have like three levels. We have the landscape, the regime, and niche. Here you can see it's the same wording. It's socio-technical landscape, socio-technical regime, and niche. So the lower you go, the more volatile things become. And as you see, you might see over here. Oh, sorry. Urbanization is actually seen as a very stable and very steady parameter, and is not actually seen as a very as a contributing element into the process of innovation or exnovation implementation. But we will see later that this is actually not what we disagree on. So, and to do the third question that we are asking is what is the method used? Through many steps, and it took almost a year through the work. There was many investigation that led to profiling of the result from a problem definition to research question. And I think everybody here is kind of familiar with the process of research. However, the part we are talking about that actually takes makes it specific to this work is the analytical framework. So it's taken into part like a cartographical analysis and a literature review of the policies, as well as a confrontation with the local actors, and a study of cases of comparable cities. And from these two, we have findings that led to conclusions. So the analytical frameworks is the user has like a two-step analysis process. And actually, this is what makes it this is the first part, and it was borrowed from a previous work that was novel in its way of dealing with analysis of mobility policies, because it actually included the urban fabric. It's one of the rare ones that actually include the urban fabric in this work. The only addition that I had to add was the more structuring of this analysis by giving a quotation and a variant indicator. So what we see through the I'm gonna be doing a back and forth here. So we have many indicators. We have six ones that actually for each policy give us a grade, and at the end we have a total grade. So these six was like the vision behind the policy instrument, deviation with conformity, if we are like moving away from dependent on the car, or we are like going beyond that. Applicability of self-reinforcing process, or we are feeding back the support for are we supporting the structure of the automobile dependent city, or we are moving beyond that. The predictability of policies, the presence of learning, and the type of network. So these six indicators, one sum up, they give us like two or many different, actually, this is like two extreme cases of variance. Some are variants that are looking towards path dependence. So path dependence is everything that is continuing or reinforcing the place of the automobile. Instead, on the other side, we have a variant of policy leaning to unlocking path dependence, which means that we are either into path destabilization or path creation. And path creation means that we are creating new ways or new alternatives. And path destabilization means that we are undermining the current regime of the automobile. So we are confronting these later, the indicator results with the urban fabric. So after each analysis, we come out with innovative elements that emerge and are highlighted in the analysis. And in each one of these elements, we actually analyze it or confront it to every typology of the city. Here I'm giving, for example, the results of the RER Vélo. RER means the high-speed network for bike. It's actually an adaptation of the high-speed trains that links cities. It's like local ones. This is for the bikes. For example, the elements that emerge from this analysis is that the vision of a coherent cycle network linking the region to its suburbs by bike aims to increase the proportion of short bike trips, as well as allowing travel by bicycle over greater distance by providing cyclists with a higher average speed. And the second one was the new network of users and cooperation with the Flemish and Brussels region. For example, in the car city, we see that this takes the approach of following natural and artificial barriers, canals, highways, railroad lines, which makes it possible to follow fairly flat and relatively direct roads. So we are using infrastructure from the car city and as well as transit city to help us build a new alternative. But it increases the attractiveness of cycling for commuters and reduce the configuration of homework commute. As for the transit city, we see that we are not hindering the railway network. This system creates new opportunities for modal change, and we see by the creation of many other new intermodal changes between the bikes, the bus, and all in all in the train stations. On the other hand, we have the walking city, where in that part where we have the separation of cycling lane and pedestrian traffic can attract more, would attract more users. We have an improvement of the usage of shared cycling, improvement of the quality of space through urban space and reorganization that leads to the appeasement of the neighborhoods. So we have uh, at the opposite of cars, we have a system of bike that actually creates that drives at a lower speed and actually can enhance the tranquility of the neighborhoods and actually enhances the Vulcan city. And as you can see, we have a very the variance actually, as you can see here, is more leaning toward path creation and more as well as path destabilization. And maybe it does not make any much sense, but it's as you don't know the policies, but the chosen one were 8. Sorry. So the Ville 30 or the City 30 is a policy that aims to reduce or make per quota per principle all the speed limit in the city 30 kilometers. The LAZ, the low emission zones. The PRPS is a chapter in the regional plan for parking. I'm sorry. The smart move is still in a project. It's not yet in place. It's a policy to create a péage, or how we call it, like in London, where you have to pay for kilometers that are used. The cargo bike is more of an initiative of local association that helps to provide lessons and lessons to learn how to use a cargo bike, like I don't know if a cargo bike. The Error Velo, which I talked about, the Wilbroek Sneltram, which is a high-speed tram that links Brussels to its suburbs. We have also the Metro 3 that is a replacement of a current tram line into a metro. And after that, there was many interviews that I had and many stakeholders that I had talked to, but at the end I settled with 6 interviewee. 2 are from the urban planning sector, 2 others from the mobility and transportation sector, and 2 from the research field. And each one of them actually gave me their view and their perception of the city. And those were the set of questions asked on how we see the relationship between the stabilization of the car and the creation of alternatives, and which one should come first. It's like always a question of the chicken and the egg. And yes, and there was many deviation, or like try to not answer that question frankly. The second question was about the less dense urban fabric, which is car city, and how we can actually adopt a mobility strategy, and how can we actually deal with this low density matter. The third question was about the urban planning options, and what are the urban planning options that are needed to destabilize the car city. And the fourth question was actually the opposite. What are the urban planning options that are essential for the creation of new alternatives to the alt car approach? And the fifth question was an example of a region to follow in terms of mobility and transport strategy. Well, these whole questions actually led to many other questions. The first one is, and actually was confirming what we was first thought, that is that the urban fabric matters, that the urban fabric influences how the outcomes of every mobility policies. This is why what it also explains. We have from part of cities different reaction to a mobility policy that introduce. Some places are very refractory, very against it, and some are very favorable because everybody lives in actually in a different type of city, one that is where commodities and distances are very short because everything is close by, and others that actually depends either they would buy a choice or not on the car, and that actually uh, 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 are faced with a problem where they want actually do better for the city, but at the same time they cannot afford not to give up their cars because the way the city there is shaped does not allow them to. The second part is that the mobility policy scoring and the relative dimension. So I'm gonna give you a whole overview on which on how every mobility policy scores and why. The first one is the city the 30-kilometer city. It actually scores quite badly because in terms of the stabilization, it does not actually provide much of a solution because we still remain with some exception where the city with the cars can drive above 30 kilometers, and we don't have any changes, and it does not actually give any it does not challenge the car. It actually just limits its speed, but it does not confront it. It just deals with it. Second part is the LEZ, the low emission zones. This one scores quite better because it actually forces people that cannot to change their car, and maybe in that change people would actually give up the car because don't want to have it. It could be discouraging for them, but at the same time, we don't see it as a very uh, groundbreaking solution, because even if we manage, which is undoubtedly, if you manage to replace all the cars in Brussels by electric ones or hydrogen, we would still with the same problem of congestion, with the road insecurity, and we would have actually less incentive to reduce the speed because uh, it we the argument would be that we don't pollute anymore. At least we don't pollute locally. The third policy actually brings no novelty in the sense of we are taking away the parkings that are on street to one that is off street, and it's mostly just hiding the problem, even though it actually allows for maybe for new mobility policy for new transport modes to take place, like new bus lines or new new bike lanes. The smart moves actually scores quite strangely because it's, even though it remains into a path dependence, it scores more as well into a path destabilization. And to explain this is that we have a pro I mean uh, a barrier that is created to not allow cars to enter the city unless they are, and that actually it makes it very expensive to to own a car because the usage is then price dependent on the time. But even though it comes with its flows, because for some users it might become very cheap to actually, the local ones that in Brussels, it becomes very cheap not uh, uh, to own a car because the usage of a Brussels is limited, but the inconvenience of the car remain the same because the spot it takes is still there. The cargo bike is actually one of the first one that grade very well because it creates it focuses more on learning. It focuses more uh, on giving people a taste of new alternative. It also undermines the knowledges we have, or ideal we have of a car, that we only can move big things or big elements only by car. But this one proves actually that we can take our items, big items, or even our kids into a cargo bike. And the second one, sorry, the sixth one is the bike lanes is scores actually pretty well, because it creates new alternatives. It hinders the place of the car, since it takes space from the car physically, and gives it to a new transport mode of transport. The Wilbrook Snail tram is also scores well, even though it has some risks. It's a tramway that links two cities in the suburb of the city to the center of Brussels. However, it has also some risk of letting people decide to live further, because now the mode of transport is available, and then they can reach Brussels faster. So it's one of the very hesitant mobility policies, but it's still not yet on the way. The Metro 3 is actually the one that scores quite in the middle. It's it's uh, it's a project that replaces a tram called also Tram 3 and wanted to turn it into Metro. And one of the good part is that it creates many urban renewal around the future metro station. However, it costs too much. It costs a lot of money, and many criticism actually has risen to attack this project, as the money could be spent elsewhere into other mode of transport, and to bring more alternatives. The second part is a new urban form, and that one is actually related to, I would think you would guess, to the bike city. So if I would take you back to the policies that are brought, they all take space into a city that is mostly finished, in the sense that we don't have, like in the 60s or the 50s 60s, where we had a very big urban sprawl, a very big urban development where the population was growing fast. We have today a very steady city that is actually adapting to new mobility usage. So it's mostly, we don't have I don't think we will have a new urban form that is like gonna spread beyond the city that exists today, but mostly we're gonna readapt this city that we have today, and it's mostly to oriented towards the bike, and that's how we call today the bike the bike city. And it's actually leads me to this graph that, or just like brainstorming that I was doing, and where we have actually, through many the interviews interviews done, I had the feedback that the first element that should be taken care of is the user and how their perception of the space. But talking to the mobility specialists or the urban planning specialists, where I thought that they would more be inclined to talk about densifying the car city, or to change the road the road structure. There was more like focus on how we need to see where are the needs of the users. And this diagram is trying to actually englobe this whole idea. We have today a mentality that is very oriented toward the car, where we have a very big lobby of the cars that created an image, an ideal of what is to be in a car, and made it as a main mode of transport for so many by choice or just by lobbying, and that influenced at the same time an existing urban form. So we are in a sort, we are in this part, we are kind of locked, but through many initiative, through positive speech towards the alternatives, without like only not shaming the users, but actually trying to understand them, and also through tactical urbanism, where we give like a quick solution, and the streets are becoming a terrain for experiments, and a platform to experiment the space. And at the same time, where Exnovation becomes and brings its tools, it's like by breaking down the attractiveness of car, by slowing it down, by uh, laws that limit the use of the car, of a typology of the car, by limiting limiting the taxes that are given, or the tax breakdown that are given to the car. So through that as well can the Exnovation help, and also sorry, to experiment on new modes of transport. We might manage to unlock this mentality, and go beyond towards a new mentality that sees the active mode of transport, such as the bikes, the e-bikes, or through or walking as well, or the true public transport, like the use of tramways, and also there must be an attractiveness of this a work to attract people towards this mode of transport. We might actually rethink the urban form, and where people, the users actually would drive the change towards a new urban form. So, and the last point that actually struck me is that we need a better integration between urban policies and mobility policies. Today we have an urban, sorry, a regional mobility plan, and on the other side we have also a regional urban planning law, and there is always like, it's two elements that actually are going always they are going side by side, but there should be more integration of how the mobility is seen and how it interlinks to the urban form that exists. And with that, actually, I conclude. I left most of the other points to discussion, or maybe to if you have any questions.
Okay, great. Anas, thank you so much. Everybody, if we have questions, please, Zvi has a question.
Well, thank you very, very much, Anas. I live in Montreal, so obviously, is my video working?
Yes. Hi.
Okay. I can't see myself, but I live in Montreal, so obviously we're following quite intensely what is going on in Brussels. And I'm very impressed, at least, with your approach. Like, we have similar challenges, and I like the sort of analytical framework that you're trying to apply to all of this. One question which I always ask basically everywhere is, where is parking in all of this? Like, I think parking is actually a hugely neglected part in terms of the urban fabric, in fact. And,
yeah.
So how is that dealt with in Brussels? Are you quantifying? Like, I know in Montreal, we don't even know how much parking there is.
Oh my God. Yeah. So one of the policies that I was talking about is like PRPS. It's I think you would understand me, plan régional pour le stationnement.
Oh,
And
okay.
so one of them is actually in Brussels. The aim is actually to reduce the number of parking spaces, and actually it's not even just reducing it; it's actually maximizing the usage of those parking. So many studies showed that, for example, for an office building, and that's what's this policy actually aimed most for, is for the offices, is to for example, we see that the parking in normal time or normal usage are highly used during the day, and the night they are not actually used. So what this policy aims for is like, we have this normal usage by the workers during the day, and at night we give those spots to residential or to the neighbors to use those parking. So, and that's how it works. Actually, we take away the space, the parking spots from on street, and we put them, and we reserve them for the locals into those offices. In my opinion, the policy is still not yet ambitious. It's actually, it's a policy that started like, well, I think it's like 15 years ago, and we still didn't reach the aim for that. But
Are
I'm
those
sure that
spaces accessible to the neighboring residents? Like often, like the office buildings are not necessarily so easily accessible by foot to the areas around them. Like how is it in Brussels?
yeah, it actually depends. That's how why for example, there are certain areas where we have the there is actually no possible way to access those spaces where you can walk to them, but it takes you 15 minutes, 20 minutes just to reach the parking, let alone going downstairs and get into your car. But in other places, I'm working currently on a project where actually it's 10 minutes away walking from my place, and it's an office building that has around like 5,000 spots or parking spot. It's huge, and now with the new law we have to reduce the number of parking, but also allow for the usage by the neighbors. So they are provided with the special card. It's called carte riverain, and they actually can reach these places instead of parking in front of their doors.
Okay. And are they also removing the possibility to park in front of their door? Or
In some places, yes. If the project, if there's any project that requires to create a bike lane, then you are compensated with another parking spot somewhere else, and mostly it's in the offices. But yet the system is not yet, I would say, not yet perfect in yeah. So there is like, whenever you find a spot where you can put where you can densify the usage, it is done, but it's case by case in most of the time.
okay, well, it's already much more advanced than here in Montreal, I would say in general. Do you have regional shopping malls? Is that common in the greater Belgian area?
Regional shopping mall. We do know, in Flanders we do have, actually. Flanders is a very, very low dense region, so it's very sparse, and you have some, but not like the American ones.
Okay.
There is not there we have this we call them the Steenweg. It's a big boulevards that's actually spread all over the country, and it's a very like what Vigano describes like the diffuse city.
Okay.
We do have like this around along canals of roads, and you have at times big shopping malls that are lent or parachute there.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I see that there's maybe other question.
Yes, I was putting the call out for questions in the chat. And as we're waiting for questions to come in, Anas, I am curious, kind of on a personal tip, your motivations as a researcher, what led you to this specific theme in deciding it for your thesis, and then also anything you're working on currently.
So, what led me to this interest? I think it's I think it goes most back to Detroit. It was a very humbling experience because we were inside of a city where we saw like decay everywhere, and we didn't have. It was during a workshop for an architectural project. And we didn't realize until the end, I think it's just by the end that there was actually a huge network of a streetcar and in the city, and it actually was one among the most spread and dense ones in the world. And we had no idea that this system existed, and we only thought it was like a car city from ever since. And I think this the importance of mobility then struck to me, because it is actually what's it is the blood in the veins of a city. It is not just, you cannot just build a building and expect it not to thrive if it's not well linked, if it's not well connected. And there's and how I realized how important it was to include the mobility strategies into this work, like of urban planner, of an architect, actually, to keep in mind how we are designing cities, how our buildings today actually have an impact. Even if it's just one building, it's once it's more than once it's many buildings, actually it creates more effect. So I think that's how I actually got to the disease of mobility fascination. Oh, I see a question here. Yeah, sorry, there was a second question
Let's have,
about the.
well, yeah, sure. Is it okay? Let's have Lorenzo. Do you want to ask your question?
Sure, I can ask it. I didn't know whether to put it on the post or not. I'm just curious whether you make a distinction between private automobile ownership versus the use of autos in terms of the policy, and then any insights that you have that work towards actually reducing private automobile ownership would be insightful.
Yeah, so yeah, the focus of my work was actually was mostly oriented towards the ownership of private automobile, and not the car sharing or the mobility as a service. It is mostly about the private ownership, and if the insights to reducing it is actually created is somehow undermining the attractiveness of owning a car, make it very expensive to own a car, but at the same time provide alternative for those who cannot afford to not have a car. I don't know if that makes any sense. There's mostly the people that lives in the suburbs are the ones that actually cannot afford to own a house in the main in the core of the region. So there was always this equation of people deciding to live further, but using a transport to go to the city, so they can they trade in time and trade in distance to be able to afford a house. So for those people, there should be a special solution where we should provide an adaptive mode of transport, as car sharing, as there's a special system here where it also it's called the bus taxi, where it's a hybrid between a taxi and a bus, so it's like almost a bus on demand, and also encouraging the use of the bikes, and through the link that through linking those low density areas to the high speed bike lane.
Nice. So I really appreciate that you acknowledge that we're in this, we're kind of locked into this auto dependency state. And so as we're sort of transitioning and you acknowledge the, more suburban locations, that's a dynamic that it happens where I live here in the greater Toronto area. So, the types of incentives, for example, free of charge transit. I mean, is there, merit in exploring that as we're going through this transitionary period, something kind of radical like that?
Oh, I don't know. Brussels is not really known for having a very cheap transport system, sadly. I mean, there is specific or special transport solutions where it like special prices for households that cannot afford high tickets rates. I think they we have to maybe one of the interviewees I had was advocating for actually operating certain certain lines, bus lines at loss, because actually transport is a right that we should have. So it's a social need, and a social as a country that is aiming to calling itself a social country, it's one of the things that is mostly wanted. But I don't know if making it free or free of charge is as a solution. I think it's case by case. I think that certain cities like Luxembourg city manage to can afford actually to make their transport free. We had other cities here in Belgium. I'm sorry, I forgot the name, but I can look it up. That had it for many years, had the free rate in the city, but they reversed it recently. So I don't know. It's a very controversial question, because some argue that it's a debt towards the region, and others actually see it as a very as a good way to get rid of the pollutant alternatives as a car or as a any other. But yeah, it is yeah, there should be a weighting of the benefits and the losses.
Yeah. Appreciate your insights. Thank you for
Thank you very
indulging
much.
that.
Oh, I see that's V. Oh, I see. On the topic of car ownership.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, so
please.
if somebody else wants to go, I wanted to just as on this similar topic. I know in general Belgium has rather good transportation statistics, and I was just wondering if you also follow vehicle usage, because it's not only ownership. Like most countries have ownership statistics, but very, very few places follow the usage of the vehicles. And this is something that I wish more places did. So you could tell sort of, maybe people are not getting rid of their cars, but they're using them less. And it would be something that would be, do you have that kind of information available in Belgium?
I think we do have, I don't think it's the, my answer, it might not answer a question, but we have this statistics of reason why people use their cars. So the reason
Yeah.
why they transport, that we do have. But I think we have just vague statistics on
Yeah,
how,
okay.
you know, how much
Like
time
most
it-
places.
Yes, yeah. So I don't think I might look that up because we have a very good institute of it's called IPSA. It's a very good resource for statistics. It has many that, and I would not doubt it that they might have that. I will check it out. I will look
But
at it. I've never thought of it.
when you register a vehicle, does anyone ask like what the odometer reading is, or does the vehicle have to be inspected every year or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I think that's every after a couple of years you have to do it every year for the inspection. But do you mean the
Just to see like look at how far the car has traveled and actually keep track of it in a year. And ideally for all of the vehicles. So that could help you to like, I mean, ideally we want to decrease travel overall. That's like really the goal. And then
Oh,
ideally owning less cars as well would be good, but using them
I
less is also good.
yeah, I would not doubt it that this might exist. I just don't know how to find it, but I'm pretty sure that there is actually a way to get it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I will look it up and get back to you because I have never thought of it. I will check it out.
Okay, thank you.
Kilometrage. Great.
I'll let someone else ask questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hello, do we have other questions? We have about 25 minutes remaining, so we can field some more questions.
Hi. I don't know if it's not really a question, but more of a follow-on comment from the last discussion that Zvi and our presenter were having. This idea of automobile ownership and as an influencer in terms of mobility behavior, it sounds like that's what you were working on, obviously, through this research. So, I mean, how deep is the behavior once you actually have a vehicle that's in ownership that you have easy access to? So that, I mean, that was my question around how do you reduce the automobile ownership? I think you've given some really great policy insights to make it difficult to use and own an automobile. But just as we think about this ownership sort of question, you know, strategies, again, deliberate and purposeful to sort of, you know, get people to think differently about ownership. Here in our country, and where I live, we recently eliminated the nominal vehicle registration. So, I mean, these policies are, you know, going counter. And so that's why, you know, when I suggest something like, you know, would free of charge transit make any difference? It's as radical as doing something like that. I mean, so these are the things that have occurred as a policy direction from governments. And so how do you counter that as if you're trying to advocate and lobby for something different? It's a little bit loaded. I understand that, but we're in a radical sort of sense in terms of the locked in state of the dependency. And so how do you break free of that? I think you require some, you know, really radical policy.
Yeah, I see your point because so the term, that's why we brought like the term of exnovation instead of like innovation. When we see at certain limits that, for example, Brussels is like a perfect case of a very dense system of transport. We see a very compare it to for example, American cities, very dense city, compact, and yet we still have a very high usage of the car. And even though if we make it very even free access like free rates for the transport, for the buses, tram, whatever, I think we will still have people that choose to go and take the car, because there is this big either because they don't have any other choice, or just because per law for the car, we have to admit the car is like an extension of what is the house of the person, of the user. And when we target the I would say, it's gonna sound like a mean way to do it, but it's like when we are targeting the comfort of this car and how we are making it very a nightmare actually to take a car and drive away, to drive to your destination. And at the same time, it should be like it's a parallel thing. You make it very difficult for the car to drive in the city, and at the same time you make it the other alternatives uh, uh, more attractive, because if you reduce the lanes dedicated to the car and you give it to a bus, and then you see while you're driving, you see, oh, the bus passed by and I'm still stuck in the traffic. The next time you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna take a bus. But just making the bus free, but while the bus is still stuck in the traffic, would not change much, because I mean, yeah, of course you're not paying the gas, but you're still not arriving on time also to your thing. So this Exnovating the car, like we need like literally to push down the car to say, okay, we need to free up this space so we can let the alternative go ahead and thrive, because that's what the car did actually a century ago. When we had like a very dense network of tramways, but it was not letting the car drive safely, and it was like obstructing the usage of the car. So we have in the United States, we had the case of the buyout of all the streetcar by General Motors, and they actually just killed it down, and so the streetcar were replaced by buses, and we had the urbanism of what we know today. So I think we need to learn from the strategies of the automobile and put them back to give them the change.
Okay, Rituparna has a question. Oh, she's asking it. Okay, if I can ask on her behalf. She's asked, Rituparna in Kharagpur, India is asking, how is the EV scenario in Brussels? Are there any policies to promote EVs?
Yes. I will first start with what is proposed and then what I'm thinking of it. Yes, there is the we call the LES, which is the low emission zones, which actually by gradually, by step by step, we are taking away the polluting cars, and depends. Here in Europe we have the Euro standards, so we starting by the most polluting one till the least polluting ones, and the aim is by 2030 all the diesel engine will be out of Brussels, will be forbidden to enter Brussels, and by 2035 no polluting or thermal car would be allowed in Brussels, either diesel or gasoline. In the meantime, we have in meantime we also have other policies that create quotas of charging docks into public and private parkings, but the change rate is still very low, and the shift that we are having towards the EV cars is very slow, in terms like we are eliminating more and more cars, but at the same time we're not giving or incentivizing more EV cars. In my personal opinion, we should aim for less cars in general, and not just like replacing the current amount of or number of cars thermical cars by EV cars, because it's just exporting our problems to other places. I mean, I think we are all aware of how polluting the EV cars, the fabrication of these cars is responsible of, and all, as well as the afterlife of the engines that we have, the cars that we are forbidden from the market. Even today, we still have like the old cars going to places like Cuba or Senegal to be sold, and I think now the new market is towards Bulgaria, whatever. So it's not really a solution per se. It's mostly just exporting the pollutions elsewhere. So that's where we are aiming for less cars in general. And as for the strategy that the city is taking, is like we see many collaboration with the Total or with other to provide hotspot. I mean spots for charging spots for the cars. I can give just the example of my street, where actually there was new works to plant more trees, but also there is like for every block two parking spots dedicated to charging electric cars. So this is kind of like the politic of at least of my municipality, because here we have a very high autonomy for each municipality to implement their strategy. I hope this answer your question, or maybe if there's more, if there's any blank spots. I read what Ritu Parna just said. I agree with your view. In India too, we have new policies coming up to promote EVs. And we do have EV buses in the main cities, although the percentage of the fleet is pretty less. Personal EV is still new in India, but it does have a good market in India. Yeah, it's a good point that you're pointing out, is actually one of the main focus is providing for all the car sharing and all the buses that they be electrical. So that's yeah, that's a good point actually. That's all the public transport would be directed toward electrification rather than having them using gasoline. And also, if it for the EVs, I mean, we still have we do have the emergence of the e-scooters, and actually they take a huge part of the public transport share, and they're actually using more and more that share to people are using more and more to go around the city. All right, does anybody else have a question, please?
Okay, any other questions before we wrap up? So as we're waiting for any final questions, Anas, as I said at the beginning of this roundtable, I hope we can host you in the future.
Oh, I would love to.
Okay, in 2023 for a roundtable on your other thesis and or other things you would like to discuss. If you want to share just a little bit about what that might look like, that would be great, because that will lead into the next one then.
All right. Do you want like what it looked like of the other work, or
if you want, or
oh yeah,
a brief about what you did with your other thesis? You already
oh
just
yeah,
did a
yeah,
little bit.
sure. Yeah, of course. It's the previous work was less of an analytical work, but more of retrospective. It had another approach where I took on the work of Rem Koolhaas on his XL, L, and MS scales of the city, and actually I discuss every part of the history of the city actually on every level. Like the Excel is very the large, extra large area, and how the city evolved, and how the transport actually spread, and how it shifted. And the more you zoom in into the city, we see how the transport, the evolution of transport influenced also the typology of urban fabric, and as well as the urban the house per se, and how the houses evolved with every typology of the of transport. If you allow me, I can just find you right away the other work, and so you can see how it looks like.
Okay.
It was a very fun thesis to do. It was during the start of the pandemic, so I had a lot of time to kill into maps. So I'll show you quickly. Share screen. Yeah, there you go. So this is like the work, and I will go straight forward to the table of content. And as you see, like it's
Anas,
mostly
are you
about like
sharing?
Excel.
I'm sorry, Anas, are you sharing your screen?
Yes, I'm do you manage to see it, or
No,
didn't
not
it
yet.
work? Oh, sorry about that. Hold on. Now?
Yes.
Amazing. So as I was saying, it's mostly a work that's evolved through many scales. And the larger you go, the larger it is, the more it's urban planning oriented, and the smaller you go, it's more about like um the social, and the mostly social, related to the racism, and the segregation that that city encountered. And at the end, we start like the M, for example, M scale is the scale of a block, and we arrive at the S. It's mostly at the typology of houses block. Type. Sorry. So yeah. Sorry. So yeah, this is kind of like a preview. I don't want to go towards all of the. It's kind of like uh, a summary. For example, here you can see the summary of what the city would like, the different uh, prism, or would I say the prism of reading of the city. There was also an economical way of reading the city, where I depended a lot on the Marcus work about the pre-capitalism city, the laissez-faire city, and the mature capitalism, and how they collide with every typology of the city, like the railroad suburbs, the streetcar suburbs, and the car suburbs, and the freeway suburbs, and also the relevant event that the city encountered. So yeah, it was I actually miss working on that, on this on this thesis. It was much fun.
Great. It'll be really fun then to have another roundtable and see you explore that and revisit that. So Heather Cleveland in Sheboygan, Wisconsin says thank you in the chat. This was a deep dive on a topic where I skimmed the surface. Hello. So any last questions, comments? People can just make comments too.
Thank you very much. It was fascinating hearing about your research, and all the best on your future efforts.
Thank you very much.
Right on. Thanks, Anas. Thanks for
Thank you.
organizing. Anna, thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Just to round off here, Anas, these are all fellow network members. We had Z in Montreal, Daniel in, I think he's in Budapest or Wolfenbüttel, Germany.
Wolfenbüttel, currently.
Okay, currently in Wolfenbüttel. Ritu Parna in Kharagpur, Heather in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. So I think this was very characteristic of a global walkability correspondence network roundtable, a great international mix of folks. And thank you so much, Anas, for your time, for your presentation, and I look forward to more. Thank you.
Thank you, Annika. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.